What's the best goat for your hobby farm? Hobby farm, homesteading, any kind of small operation, even if you're just looking to dabble into it. What's the best goat variety or goat breed for your hobby farm? It's a sheep. I've owned a lot of different kinds of goats. I've had a few different kinds of sheep, and sheep, sheep are better goats. So there's a few different varieties of sheep that do a really good job of a lot more of the harder browsing that the goats do. Things like eating barks and like the cabbing leaves in trees, pine needles, foliage, stuff like that. That's gonna be more your Middle Eastern varieties, stuff like in some of your warmer climate hair sheep, your Catadines, painted deserts, right? Even the Dorpers do a pretty good job, just like a goat does. Your woolies not as much, but they still do a good job. When browse is difficult, they'll usually get it done. But if you really got your heart set on getting a goat and you don't want the sheep, and I'm going to tell you this now, not all sheep need shearing. And if you think they do, start looking to hair sheep because the Catadines are really a big up and coming sheep. They're kind of they're like everything you wish a goat was. If you catch my drift, they're calm, docile, super friendly, super hardly, but you don't need to buy a goat mineral for them. And they browse really well. But if you really, really, really gotta have a goat, Nubians are pretty good. Just throwing it out there. Nubians are good. Nubians, even Nigerian dwarves are pretty good too. Depends on what you're doing. If you want a milk goat, well, Nigerian dwarves are pretty good milk producers, and anything crossed with Nigerian dwarves seems to be pretty good milk producers. Nubians, they're a little bit larger, but they're a good all the way around goat. And as far as the breeds go, it seems like they're pretty hardy, and they don't have a lot of the more fleety tendencies a lot of the other ones that I've personally have had. And I've had everything from Nigerian dwarf all the way to a Boer, and I don't have any goats. Got rid of all of them. And a large part of the reason is there's like they're harder to house. They're way harder to house. Sheep are way more docile, and they respect fences. So it's one of those things. And then the sheep, you know what? At the end of the day, like if I end up producing too much sheep or too much like mutton, okay, then this is another thing. Mutton is a few different things. Mutton isn't just adult sheep. Mutton is goat. It's adult sheep. Oh, and it's not even just adult sheep. It's adult sheep. I think it was over 2 years old. Haggart was the 12 to 24 month. Everything before 12 months is lamb. Anyways, and then I think it was either alpaca or lamb was another mutton. So mutton is not just one thing, right? And not all sheep are the same. They all kind of they have their own little tendencies and all. But every sheep I've had, and I've got a purebred stuff like sitting up top there. She's a fantastic animal. She's so good. She's so good. But like, it's like I say, anytime if you produce too much, it's never a problem. It's one of those things. If you want to sell mutton or you want to sell lamb, it's way easier to do than it is to try and sell goat. Goat seems to be mostly people who want to feed a raw food diet to their dogs, and people who come from Middle Eastern countries or foreign countries that are more accustomed to it. A lamb is not nearly as it's not as foreign to us as it is, but most people don't eat lamb on a regular basis. So lamb is kind of like a specialty kind of thing, anyways. But it's way easier. So, like if you go and you're trying to sell lamb, let's say you have an excess, you can sell it at like 50% of market value, and it would just fly off your shelf. People would buy it. But and that's it. I mean, like the sales part of it, that's a huge thing. Goats, if you get into something that's not specifically a meat breed or something specifically a milk breed, then it's going to be hard to market the babes. Whereas the sheep, they go right, because basically anyone who does goats eventually gets into sheep too, even in small amounts. And it's one of, like, yeah, they're so much of a better animal, and they fill the same niche. up until you want to start milking them. I've heard about people milking goat or sheeps, but I don't know. I've never actually met anybody in person who does it, let alone tried it. But I know goats, and that's the other thing. Like if you want to produce your own dairy, okay, well you're not going to replace that with a sheep. If chances are better than not, you're not gonna replace it with a sheep. But that's just as far as I know. I mean, there might be a sheep variety out there that's fantastic. I mean, who knows? Maybe one of those fat tail sheeps. What are they? I can't remember what they're called, but they're another Middle Eastern breed that seems like they bag up huge. But I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a big boom coming up where people milk sheep, and if that's your goal, then yeah, I don't envy you because one of those things I didn't have any want for the milk production, and even then, like if I was looking at that, I mean, yeah, damn, I don't even know what your best option would be. I don't even know what your best option would be because yeah, to produce milk off a goat is it is what it is. You kind of have to be there to do it. And for us, in our circumstance, most everything we produce is for food. So the goats just they didn't fit the niche very well. And mutton is much easier to sell. A lamb is much easier to sell than mutton, and most people don't realize goat is mutton. So when you selling goat meat, it's one of those things people are turned off by it. I know, but it is what it is. But I'll still stick to my previous my opening. That's the best goat for your hobby farm and your homestead, your even a pet. I've seen these things being like I've seen some of these sheep being kept for pets and bonding with horses, miniature cattle even, right? Like I there's a fellow outside my local one of my local cities here. It's a small city. It's a small farming community, and this guy's got a highland out there, and he's got a bunch of sheep and goats out with it. It's hilarious. But and I guess the other part too is sheep make better goats because they're much easier to bottle feed. Given goats tend to be better mothers when it comes to kidding. But I mean, for in terms of human intervention, the sheep are much easier. Like I feed regular cow's milk. I do a high fat diet with cow's milk, and it does good. But you can't do that with a goat. Goats you have to buy the replacer because they're lactose intolerant. So they gotta have their lactate in a different form. Yeah, kind of odd. It's not that like cows lactate and goats lactate are two different things. And so you can't just replace one with the other. And unfortunately, that makes it pretty expensive. So if you've got a bottle babe, or you've got for whatever reason, like if your nanny has mastitis, you're kind of all of a sudden that goat turned into real expense, right? The sheep are just they're in almost every way better. You get I can make comparisons right down to like even like you want to talk about hooves, like you pick the right variety, right for your climate, like then almost in every way a Catadine is better than most goats. All the way up until you start looking at meat production, a Catadine isn't going to put on the size of a Boer goat, but a Suffolk will, right? But Suffolks don't like wet climates, right? And they're our large animal. I've got that Suffolk I've got up there. I'll be out there and I'll be feeding apple slices. She'll stick her head in through my armpit and she'll be here and she can like touch the bottom of my chin. It's hilarious. But anyways, but if you must have one, Nubians are a pretty safe bet. Nubians and Nigerian dwarves are a pretty safe bet. Then, and that's if you must have it. Otherwise, I stick to it. Get yourself a couple of Catadines. You'll save yourself a world of headache. And they're just as sweet. Yeah.